I don't really know how I got the role. I auditioned a great many times, and I'm not sure, but I think there may have been something to do that I, on camera, had a certain resemblance toward Joan, because she said that when she came in one day, I guess, to watch auditions, and she saw me from a distance, she thought that I was her daughter. She thought a trick was being played on her. And I think there was some kind of a, I'm not sure if the plot ever resolved that she was my mother, but I think there was some talk that that was because people started writing in because they assumed that there was some kind of family connection between us. So maybe that's how I got the part. I don't really know. Well, I remember at one point there was a, this didn't happen on the set, but we heard about an officious, very efficient, I guess, vice president from ABC decided that he would save money by going to the warehouse and seeing if there were any old sets that didn't need to be there. And he came across some sets, I think this was on a Friday, that were really filthy and had cobwebs all over them and were disgusting, and he ordered them burned. Well, it was the old house. And so there was great panic because that whole set had to be rebuilt by Monday because it was on schedule that day. So that was kind of an example of how unique Dark Shadows was, that nobody else would have had a set like that. There was the general sort of giddiness, I think, that came from the nerves and the pressure. I remember things going wrong and getting into sort of giggle fits myself that were kind of uncontrollable after working for 5 days in a row, and something would strike me as funny that didn't strike anybody else as funny, and but I'd crack up on camera and get into a lot of trouble for that, so it wasn't really funny. But I think with that that pressure that we were under, there was this kind of level of black humor that was always there. I was very impressed by the level of acting of some of the older actors like Thayer and Clarice, who were theater-trained actors. I really think it grounded the show to have some of those people, and also getting to know Thayer in an unusual way, because I think he had to be locked in the West Wing for 2 weeks, and so we spent a lot of time together. And friendships seemed to be made in the beginning by who you worked with, and there were the people at the Blue Whale, and there were the people up in the big house, and at first the closest friendships that I had were sitting around the living room in the big house in Collinwood, because otherwise we were sort of in our dressing rooms. And I had very good feelings that what was hard was the people I was fond of would very often do terrible things to me in the story, would lock me up or torture me in some way, and this was very distressing, that someone who off camera was a good friend, or Louis could be so cold and disdainful, and Nancy, I never knew what she was going to do to me next, or little David. Joan was pretty good. She never did anything too awful to me, but this was I found this kind of hard, because I was always this rather, I mean, incredibly, pathologically naive person, always saying, what can this mean when a decapitated head would turn up somewhere? And it was hard to maintain respect for Victoria sometimes when she kept going into, you know, cobwebbed hallways and whatnot. But she was intrepid. Rosemary's Baby had just come out, and there wasn't a great eagerness for me to leave the show, and I got a little nervous about the fact that possibly my pregnancy was going to be a convenient element to the plot, because nobody seemed to be making any moves, and I was getting pregnanter and pregnanter. I was so happy with this other element of my life that I didn't have any regrets. The only thing is that I missed the daily friendship and the camaraderie of being with this extended family on 53rd Street. Eventually, when I left the show and I was pregnant and I was watching the show, I couldn't figure it out, even though I'd been on it all the time. It was pretty far out. But at the same time, there was never a dull moment. After my son was born, I was asked to come back onto the series. And I said, only if I could be possessed by an evil spirit, because I was so tired of playing this goody-goody person that didn't have much range either. And the people that got to be bad, that's fun. And there was sort of an energy and a vitality to those roles, and a range. And so I said, if that was possible, that's what I'd like to do. And they said no. And I assumed that's because the audience identified with Victoria. She was an outsider, as were they. And I guess they needed somebody to fill that role. But I was very sorry. I've never gotten to play a bad person. And I envy the people that do.